Prime Minister's questions.
Member for Caroni East.
Madam Speaker, Honourable Prime Minister, could you state the total amount of the judgment award, inclusive of legal costs, to be paid to the UK-based Cobham Helicopter Services Limited with respect to determination of the Air Guard's helicopter maintenance and technical support contract, which your administration entered into in 2017?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, this question requires a certain amount of research, and 20 minutes could not do the question justice. However, I give my colleague the assurance that if he files this question with the appropriate notice, a comprehensive answer can be given at the next sitting of Parliament.
Member for Caroni East.
That, Honourable Prime Minister, I just want to jog back your memory. Could you remember at what time this contract was entered into? Because I think you were part of the government when this was done. If you can't, well, I'll wait for your answer when I ask it. I just jog in your memory.
Madam Speaker, I don't think my colleague should try to jog my memory, because my memory will take a lot of jogging. This goes way back to the cancellation of the OPVs and the contracting of the purchase of the helicopters. From the time the helicopters were purchased, the maintenance contract would have kicked in. And if your memory is jogged, you may remember it is not my government that canceled the contract. But let us wait until next week, and as a matter of fact, you will get a comprehensive answer. And that is the reason why I've asked, and I'm glad that you will acquiesce to that. So next week we'll get the whole story.
Member for Caroni East.
Honourable Prime Minister, having regard to the highly speculative and high credit risk B2 and BB minus rating ascribed to TSTT by Moody's and Standard & Poor's respectively, was the government, as 51% shareholder in TSTT, required to provide a guarantee for the company to borrow $2.7 billion via its recent 8.87% 10-year bond issue? A very important question.
Speaker, the business of TSTT does not require a government guarantee.
Supplemental. Member for Caroni East.
At all possible, indicate who would have stood this guarantee. Is it TSTT itself?
Madam Speaker, TSTT in its corporate business and its internal banking arrangements would have done that and did not require a guarantee expressed by the Minister of Finance.
Supplemental. Member for Caroni East.
Would you indicate whether you're aware if a note came to Cabinet via the Minister of Public Utilities on this issue?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, a note would have come to Cabinet well in advance of this date or this particular issue, where TSTT indicated a strategic plan. And in that strategic plan, it would have indicated how it intended to proceed.
Member for Naparima.
Speaker, could the Prime Minister inform this House which company printed the new Polymer $100 bill?
Prime Minister.
The Polymer $100 bill would have been printed by the same company that normally prints our money and has been doing so for the last 20, how many years? For decades, I shouldn't do. That company is Delarue.
Supplemental. Member for Naparima.
Could the Prime Minister indicate when the order was placed?
Prime Minister.
I couldn't, without consulting the files, indicate, but that order would have been placed a long time ago. I couldn't give you the exact date on short notice, but the order was placed by this government, so it would not have been it would not have been your senatorial colleague. It was placed by this government, and it was placed in 2019. But the intention to place the order would have been, in fact, just to put my colleague at ease, this process, as a national security process, would have been initiated in 2017. The first pieces of correspondence would have appeared in 2017, and the actual placement of the order after preparation and discussion would have been many months ago in 2019.
Member for Naparimo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the Prime Minister inform this House of the cost of printing the new $100 bill?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, the cost of printing our money is a national security matter and will remain so. What I could tell the member is that the cost of this bulk purchase, the unit cost would have been cheaper, because normally bills are printed in increments, in tranches, and this large tranche would have resulted in a lower cost per unit.
Member for Point of Peer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Honourable Prime Minister. Prime Minister, can you provide an update into the status of two major projects which your government committed to the people of Labrie, namely the construction of a $200 million plywood factory announced in 2016 and the construction of a dry dock facility announced in 2018?
Prime Minister.
In our quest as a nation to diversify our economy, we are constantly looking for new opportunities, new openings, new possibilities. With respect to the plywood as a possibility, that was raised as a possibility and not a project. It was examined and found not to be viable, to be pursued, and has not been pursued for many reasons, not the least of which was a new development with respect to the whole environmental aspect and safety of the plywood business. Secondly, the dry dock work continues apace to get to a point where we can have an investment decision, but that work continues, Madam Speaker.
Supplementary member for Point of Peer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Honourable Prime Minister, in the second body dry dock facility, could you give us a status of what is the status or percentage of where we are with the dry dock facility?
Prime Minister.
Well, Madam Speaker, the dry dock facility, what we were committing to, what we still are committed to, is an investment. We're working with a Chinese company, and we got to the point of getting agreement on a percentage shareholding of investment. As to which company is going to do it, we've had some changes on that, and we're still working through that through diplomatic channels, Madam Speaker.
Member for Point of Peer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honourable Prime Minister, could you give the status of Mr. Mike Wiley at Heritage Petroleum Company, and if the former CEO is still receiving compensation from the said company, which is Heritage Petroleum Company?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, the former CEO of Heritage, Mr. Wiley, has had his contract ended, so he's not on the payroll. But the matter is with lawyers, where they're seeking to come to an amicable agreement with respect to the discontinuation of his contract with Heritage.
Supplemental member for Point of Peer.
The Honourable Prime Minister, supplemental, could you give us a figure of what that is outstanding, or what the agreement as far as the compensation for Mr. Wiley?
Much as I would like to facilitate my colleague, I'm not in a position to do that, but that's a matter which is internal management to Heritage, and if there's some notice, we might be able to. But since the matter is being discussed in some element of arbitration, I expect that we'd be hesitant to answer the question in that way. When the matter is concluded, that information could easily be made public.
Member for Naparimo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the Prime Minister update this House on the status of investigations into the Daryl Smith affair, particularly in the light of statements by a member of the investigative committee accusing two senior cabinet members of misogyny?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, the government, through the Prime Minister and the Attorney General, have spoken publicly on this investigation and its status. The investigation status is that a report has been done from the investigation, and legal advice obtained from the office of at the office of the Prime Minister and at the office of the Attorney General indicated that the report, by virtue of its nature and its process, could not be used in the public domain. The report was in the hands of the Permanent Secretary, Office of the Prime Minister, Head of the Public Service, and that office was also constrained by this legal impediment. And with respect to misogyny, you said? I presume misogyny. I know of I know of nobody in the cabinet that is guilty of misogyny.
Supplemental, member for Naparima.
Does the Prime Minister not think that the appropriate body for doing this investigation is the Police Service of Trinidad and Tobago? And could you indicate
One question at a time. Prime Minister.
If you can indicate what law is broken to be filed with the police, then maybe that might make some sense. A report that is not legally sustainable, a report that is not sustainable would not give the police a position on it. This thing has been discussed at length. I don't know what you'll tell the police. That is different to what we've told the public.
Supplemental, member for Princeton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honourable Prime Minister, in light of the answers that you've provided, could you indicate, in your estimation, what is the next step in terms of bringing this matter to a close?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, I had a reason to be dissatisfied with the actions in a ministry and the actions of a minister with respect to the termination of employment in that ministry. As Prime Minister, I have done the ultimate, which is to dismiss the minister. And of course, as far as I am concerned, that is the end of the matter. I do not have any authority to do anything else on that matter. With respect to any other aspect of that matter, the report which sought to investigate further nuances of the report got to the Permanent Secretary, Head of the Public Service, and that is where the matter is. So if there are opportunities for other matters to be dealt with, it has to be done through the Office of the Permanent Secretary, and as far as I am aware, the Permanent Secretary is not in a position to use any report which the legal advice indicates is not useful. And all the information surrounding that matter is in the public domain, having come from the relevant stater, the Office of the Prime Minister, the Attorney General, and in fact, the Permanent Secretary.
Member for Naparima.
Madam Speaker, was the Prime Minister aware, when he addressed the House last week on the UNIPET matter, that the state had owed UNIPET considerable sums of money, thus affecting UNIPET's ability to pay Pariah Fuel Trading Company Limited for fuel supply?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, I had no involvement in UNIPET's financial status when I addressed this House last week. I addressed an issue on the simple note that UNIPET is required to pay Pariah for product made available to Pariah. And that is as far as I am aware and I'm prepared to go. UNIPET's, from UNIPET's requirement to pay Pariah is not conditional, as far as I am aware, on what other agencies of government owe UNIPET. Those are completely separate matters.
Supplemental, member for
Is the
Naparima.
Prime Minister given to commenting on matters where he's not fully apprised of all the information and going on to
A member for Naparima, I'm not going to allow that question. Member for Carinese.
Honourable Prime Minister, would the government be prepared to allow UNIPET to import their own fuel by themselves, or privately, or any other Petroleum company to import their fuel on their own without going through MP and so on.
I'm not going to allow that question arising out of what has already been discussed there. Member for Naparima.
Could the Prime Minister inform the House of the quantum owed by National Petroleum Marketing Company to Pariah Fuel Trading Company Limited as at November 30th, 2019, or at the latest date for which said data is available?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, NP has paid all its non-subsidy amounts for September and October and has paid approximately $500,000 towards the not yet due November bill. $321,937,441 would be the total due for November. And, well, it's not yet due.
Member for Naparima.
Could the Prime Minister inform this House if and when the Campaign Finance Reform Bill will be introduced and debated in both houses of Parliament?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, this government does not deal with if and when. We made definitive statements and commitments were made that this government will bring to this House campaign finance reform. And, Madam Speaker, the government has spoken publicly that we have draft legislation in readiness to bring to this House. We have a legislative agenda, and that piece of legislation will take its place in that agenda in the very near future.
Supplemental member for Naparima.
Prime Minister indicate some time frame in which it will be brought to Parliament in the context of the next general elections.
Prime
I
Minister.
just did. I said it's going to take its place in the scheme of the legislative agenda, and that was said against the commitment that it will be done. This government has committed to do it. This government is saying that the legislation is advanced and would be in this House in the very near future, and it will come to the House for treatment in the very near future.
Supplemental member for...
Can I take it then, Prime Minister, that it will come before the next general election?
I'm not going to allow that. I'm not going
Do you
to
know
allow
what
that.
next general election
Prime
is?
Minister, I'm not going to allow that.